I'm Megaton Athabaskan. I was born and raised right here in Fairbanks, but my family was originally from a village called Holy Cross, and that's about 550 river miles away from here. My great-grandfather had his own stern-wheeler boat, and he loaded his whole family, 12 kids and his wife, onto that boat and traveled until he reached Nenana. Nenana's only about 60 miles downriver from here, and so don't be complaining about a road trip with your kids. But he would load his boat up with freight and supplies and would deliver it to the different villages along the Tanana and Yukon rivers. He eventually became chief of Nenana. And right now, I'm attending a university here in Fairbanks, and I've just completed my first year of nursing school. Hopefully, 3 more to go, but we'll see. I'm going to pass it over to Hannah. She's going to share with you folks about these animals you see in front of you.
Okay, well, I would like to point out the hide of the grizzly bear over there. And then, of course, right next to me here, we have a very beautiful example of the moose. Now, this moose right here was taken right out of the Fairbanks area, and it does have trophy-size antlers on it. Those are 73.5 inches. Very, very lucky to have this moose. But the moose was a very important animal to the Athabaskan people. They would take the moose, and every part of the animal was used. They'd use the meat for food, of course, and then the bones were used to make tools, and the hide was cleaned and used for clothing and shelters. But the moose is a very territorial animal. It travels alone and definitely does not follow the same path each year. So as you can guess, the moose is a very hard animal to hunt. But the Athabaskan people learned they could call a moose into the area. They'd have 2 methods to do so. One of these methods was to take a shoulder blade of a moose from their previous kill. They'd take that shoulder blade and scrape it up and down a tree. Now that sound is meant to imitate a moose rubbing its antler against a tree during mating season or rutting season. But if that didn't work, the Athabaskans could also verbally call a moose into the area. They would take a birch bark megaphone like this one and verbally make the moose's mating call, which is a low guttural grunting noise.
Anna, come on.
Now I go hunting for moose every year. Here, moosey, moosey, moosey. And I've never gotten one. But once the strange noises brought that moose into the area to investigate, the men would take a weapon of their choice, and they could choose to use a bow and arrow, a club, or a sling. They could also choose to use a bone-tipped spear like this one here. Now, to use the bone-tipped spear, the men would provoke the moose to come towards them. Once they did that, they'd plant their spear into the ground and crouch down below it at a 45-degree angle. That moose would come charging towards them. Much like a horse, it would go up on its hind legs, trying to come down and stamp out the hunter. However, it would impale itself on the tip of the spear, so all the hunter had to worry about was quickly and very skillfully rolling out from underneath that heavy falling animal. But once the men got the animal, it did become the women's job to clean and preserve the hide. She would begin doing so by taking tools she made from the moose and caribou. She would take the shin bone of the moose, and she would use this as a tool to scrape off all the flesh from the hide. After that, she would flip the moose hide over. Using hot rocks, she would singe off the hair from the hide. That would leave a remaining stubble, however, so she would take the split and sharpened shin bone of the caribou. Using that like a razor, she would scrape off that remaining hair. Now, after all of that scraping process, the women would be left with a thick and durable piece of rawhide, like this one right here. And as you can tell, this is way too stiff to be used for clothing. So the women would cut it into small strips like this and use it as an all-purpose rope called babiche. But if they wanted to continue the tanning process to make the rawhide soft enough for clothing, the women would make a natural acidic solution, add a fermented moose brain and water. She would soak her hide in that, and that would begin breaking down the tough fibers of the hide. She would then take a tool like this one here called a clabasse, Now this is much like the Eskimo ulu, however it does have a serrated edge. She would take this tool and use it to scrape out all those tough fibers from the hide. And after weeks of soaking, scraping, and wringing the hide out, it would be reduced down to a nice soft material, like the one I have behind me. And she would preserve that by smoking it. You can always tell traditional tanned hide by its rich, smoky smell and its brown color. But right now I'd like to pass it back over to Stacy so she can tell us about those beautiful garments.
Alright, well right here I have this maiden's dress. And the ceremonial chief's coat. And both of these garments were made from the traditionally tanned moose hide, and they're trimmed with beaver fur. Athabascans were well known for their beadwork, and you can see an example of this on the bottom of the maiden's dress. These are forget-me-nots and bluebells, and the women often got her ideas from her surroundings. So if you were to go into this woman's village, you would see plenty of these same flowers. The bees are really bad this summer, and I just got a fish, so they love me. But on the back of this chief's coat, the floral beadwork tells a different story. These were meant to symbolize animal footprints, and the woman would sew this onto her husband's garments in order to bring him good luck during the hunting season. So right here, this is the footprint of the wolf, the lynx, the rabbit, and the white connecting in between were ptarmigan dancing in the winter snow. And these bone buttons on the front of this chief's coat were cross-sections of the moose antler, whereas these more delicate buttons on the maiden's dress were cross-sections of the caribou antler. And this next piece is a little bit heavy, so I'm going to need some help with it. Hannah, can you come out? Now what you guys are looking at is an all-traditional Athabascan women's winter parka. It's basically all traditional, except for the big zipper down the middle, but traditionally it would be a pullover parka. The main body of this parka is made from the muskrat. The bottom is trimmed with river otter. The black and white designs you see are calfskin, and the tassels hanging throughout the parka are wolverine tipped with timber wolf. The woman would sew this onto her parka to show that her husband was an excellent hunter and he did catch the tricky wolverine. Get your cameras ready. She's going to put up the sunshine ruff. And you guys can see why we call this the sunshine ruff. The outer portion is the timber wolf, and the inner portion is the wolverine. The wolverine would be sewn closest to the face because it does have the natural oil in its fur, so the oil would repel your breath and prevent frostbite along your face. And she's going to show you guys the design on the back. Now designs like this were passed down generation to generation, mother to daughter. And this floral design is a technique called caribou hair tufting. This is where caribou hair is dyed naturally, sewn into the parka, and then trimmed down to the desired shape. It would then be surrounded by glass seed beads. And if this woman were to go into a different village, you could tell where she came from and even which village she was from, just by the design on the back of her parka. Thank you, Hannah. And Hannah will be modeling that parka for you guys, so you can come up and take any pictures that you guys think you might want to get. But I will be down at Fish Camp, and it has been a pleasure sharing with you folks today. In my native language, Dagadan Sitsida An. Thank you very much, my friends.